Did Hollywood spend too much of Hugh Jackman's career casting him as the hero, when his real strength was actually playing damaged, conflicted men? That's the question I found myself asking while I revisited Erskineville Kings from 1999. So for me, Hugh Jackman's two greatest film performances are definitely this film and Prisoners. Two roles where he definitely isn't the hero, but he is a man carrying enormous emotional pain. I think most people remember Jackman as Wolverine, or the charismatic leading man, the guy who can do everything. But watching him in this film really early in his career did remind me that I think his greatest strength might actually be showing men who are angry or damaged and are definitely struggling to deal with things they can't fix. Why did I watch this film again? It's one of those films where the first thing that hits me isn't necessarily the story, it's the time period. And within minutes, it transported me back to the Sydney that I lived in the late 90s. In those opening scenes, watching Barkey walk through Central Station immediately brought back all those memories of commuting to and from work, all the way from either the southern suburbs of Sydney while I was living up there, primarily, or even from the south coast. I did that for close to a year, commuting to Sydney and North Sydney regularly, 3-hour round trip a day. It was a big part of my life at that time. And this film has really captured part of a world that's disappeared. This part of Sydney doesn't exist anymore. The Telstra payphones gone. Looking up train platforms without a smartphone, getting the surly response from the from the guy behind the grill, as Barkey does early in the film. Turning up at someone's house, and that was fine. Nowadays, you wouldn't dream of it without texting them first. Video stores. Joel Edgerton's character running an Indian Asian video store. All those titles stacked on the shelves, all the posters in his flat. VHS tapes everywhere. PlayStation 1 sitting there. That wasn't too far from my reach in the late 90s. That was all the rage. Stephen King novels sitting on the shelves. Even guys who didn't read anything else might have had a few Stephen King novels sitting around. VB cans in the fridge. Wasn't much of a choice back in those days. I can generally remember VB or Tui's. This film isn't trying to be nostalgic, though. It's just capturing life, everyday life as it was in that time period. And this film, obviously in the title, you can see it's set in Erskineville, a real Sydney suburb. What's it about? Well, Barkey is a young man who returns to Sydney from up in northern Queensland, where he's been working on sugarcane farms because his father's died. And in flashbacks, we see that he was a domineering, abusive father. And he comes back. He comes back home for the funeral. His older brother Wace, that's the Hugh Jackman character, has been there the whole time. Has nursed his father through from a stroke to his death, and had to arrange the funeral. Had to put the house on the market, do all those adult things, and Barkey's just there for a couple of days, seemingly, for the funeral. Wace, we soon see when the brothers reunite that there's a lot of anger and unresolved emotion between them, a lot of anger from Wace's side, focusing around their mother leaving the family unit when the boys were young, and Barkey blames his father for that. Wace blames the mother for that. and indirectly blames Barky for that too, maybe, or thinks that Barky needs to grow up and just get on with things and stop complaining. And there's extended scenes at the hotel with a couple of other mates there, over quite a few schooners, playing pool, and some pretty dark moments happening there. And the brothers feud escalates throughout the film, leading up to the funeral, and it's not so much plot driven. It's really about this relationship between brothers, dealing with quite a few traumatic incidents, and the film's really asking if damaged family relationships can ever really be repaired. And we get a front row seat. Like I said, the film is set in Erskineville Kings. Most of it takes place in a pub, in this inner city Sydney suburb, and it's filmed in and around all these narrow lanes, terrace houses, a lot of urban decay, out the back of these small flats, people living in close quarters. It's summer, it's really hot. That's always a dangerous component in family flare-ups. It's definitely not the glossy Sydney that you see in tourism ads. It's the Sydney where people were renting small places, sharing with friends and figuring life out. I can remember that time. This was a year out from the Olympics. And this, as you see with lots of cities that host the Olympics, this is not, like I just said, this is not the Sydney that was shown to the rest of the world. The sharehouse experience looms large in this film, especially at the start. There's a few great scenes capturing this stage of life before people are settled in their careers, before mortgages and families, before everything becomes complicated. And I can recall just living with friends nearly 24/7, hanging around, drinking. These characters have their routines, get up late, have a smoke, have a beer, talking, listening to music. Lots of great Aussie music in the background in this film too. Just existing, experiencing life out of the family home. And those little inner city flats were full of people doing exactly that. You'd get there, there'd be 2 or 3 people just sitting on the couch in the afternoon. Someone else would turn up. Someone would suggest going to the pub. Nobody rushing anywhere. Nobody had firm plans that couldn't be changed. I think this film really understands that feeling of being young and independent for the first time. The family. I think the big issue here, that I mentioned, is family grief and guilt. The film gets pretty heavy. That relationship between the brothers, it feels so authentic. It's acted really well, especially by Hugh Jackman. It's not a simple conflict because, nothing ever is, right? Nobody's completely right or completely wrong. There's always grey. It's whether people want to acknowledge that and I guess empathise with the other side, or try and imagine what people were feeling a long time ago. Wace is really angry because he believes something unforgivable happened, and he makes a strong case. Their mother walked out on them for reasons that were never really explained, and he can see the impact that had on his dad. And underneath that anger is a lot of grief. Barky is struggling to settle himself. That's why he left. He left a relationship behind as well. And he can recall, there's a brief flashback scene where Barky can recall Wace being beaten, and he's looking for the meaning in things, whereas Wace is just trying to get on with things and be the strong, silent type. Barkey's trying to explore his feelings, and it all comes out with a couple of mates standing by awkwardly, not wanting to intervene. I've been in that spot. It's a very tough spot. And the film really gets that families often carry these old wounds for years without ever properly dealing with them. Not this family. Barkey's return and the confrontation with Wace gets everything out in the open. All right, the main focus for me that I got out of this was Hugh Jackman as Wace. I'm not a huge Hugh Jackman fan. Never have been, except for 2 or 3 moments. I thought he was good as Wolverine. I thought that was a good role. I haven't enjoyed some of the more squeaky clean performances or persona, I guess, that he's projected throughout his career. Just a personal thing. It just hasn't. It's not that I don't like it. It just doesn't say much to me. It seems not that interesting to me. This film comes out a year before X-Men, before he really became one of Hollywood's biggest stars. And rewatching this now shows me what he was and is capable of. And this performance really works because Wace is not an easy character. He's really angry. He's confrontational. He's very damaged. He's a cruel guy too. But eventually, Hugh Jackman never makes him unlikable, really. We can see he's damaged and conflicted and angry and emotional, but you can really understand the pain underneath. And the having to go through that, helping his father die in what he believed was a humane way, is a very tough thing to handle. And it's destroyed him emotionally. He's trying to protect himself by being stronger and tougher outwardly, and he just can't process the guilt he feels. And so what does he do? He directs it outwards towards his younger brother. His younger brother's an easy target. He wasn't around. He sees him as soft and more like the mother that left. And the tragedy for him, for Hugh Jackman's character, is that he starts becoming like the father he resents, and that's where everything breaks down in the encounter in the men's bathroom. For me, the connection becomes really interesting when I think about Hugh Jackman in Prisoners, the 2013 film. In that one, he plays a father who's driven to extremes after his child disappears or is taken. He thinks that Paul Dano's character is responsible, and he starts to try and get the answers and really goes outside the normal boundaries. In Erskineville Kings, he plays a son who's been destroyed by the death of his father and probably years of keeping his feelings inside and intact. Both these characters in these films, Prisoners and Erskineville Kings, are desperate men. Their emotions are coming to the surface. They're flawed, for sure, like we all are. And they're really struggling with situations that are out of their control. And it just made me think, is Hugh Jackman's greatest strength not playing the perfect hero? Is it, in fact, playing men who are coming apart? And is it the fact that he either wasn't offered enough of these roles or he chose not to take them? I don't know. But or did he not enjoy these roles? Because he's a natural. When I see Erskineville Kings and Prisoners, he's very convincing, and he becomes a totally different actor to me. All right, Marty Dennis as Barkey. Look, he's fine as the younger brother. He definitely brings an ordinary quality to the role, and he feels like someone caught in a situation much bigger than himself. He looks damaged. He seems damaged, but I don't know. I do wonder if the film could have been better with a more expressive person in this role. I don't know whether he was directed that way to not show anything. I don't know. I just feel like if someone a bit more capable had been in this role, going up against Jackman, it might have been even more interesting because Jackman's just such a powerful presence. He totally dominates the film. Maybe that was the intention. The dialogue in this movie is incredible. It doesn't seem like it's been written. It just seems like you're there watching it. The conversation in the car with Joel Edgerton is fantastic. He leads this three-way conversation about the underwear they're wearing. One guy's got boxer shorts. One guy's got Y fronts, and Joel Edgerton's saying that he just wears the normal underwear because he could never train himself to use the opening in the Y fronts. It's completely irrelevant to the plot, but that's exactly why it works. People talk like this, and I can remember so many of these conversations when you're on the way somewhere in the car. Just brings a lot of authenticity to the movie. The pub scenes are really at the center of this film, and the old pub there in Erskineville, perfect setting. Back then, I can remember being this age, you go to the pub in the middle of the day and you wouldn't know when you were going to leave. You didn't have anything else on. You'd just go for a couple of beers. And those couple of beers could turn into an entire day and night. Someone else would come. Someone else would leave. You'd play the pokies for a while, a game of pool. You get into some pretty deep conversations. Who knows what would happen? The day would just continue. And this film really captures that rhythm of Australian life at the time and that age before everything becomes scheduled, and also technology connected through phones. You didn't know where people were. You couldn't reach them. Things just flowed organically back then. The scene between the two brothers in the pub is the emotional center of the film. It's extended, and it's tense and it's awkward. And it's uncomfortable. Jackman is brilliant in these moments. The anger wells up naturally. It just seems like the way it would. All that resentment and hurt, all the things that he hasn't said for years. He starts out with these short little statements that are sort of edging around things, and he eventually gets right into it. Nothing is held back. And like I said earlier, it did remind me of being stuck in the background while brothers I've known or family members argue about deeply personal things, and they kind of forget you're there and you've got to deal with it. And at some point you usually have to try and mediate or step in, and that's a tricky moment. You see that happen in this film a couple of times. You don't know whether you should leave or stay, and if you leave, that's saying something about you, and you end up just sitting there quietly sipping your beer. Like I said, it's another reason why the scene just feels painfully real. This film was directed by Matthew Ryan. Not a name I've recalled or come across. He directs it in a very restrained way. Just lays it out there. Nothing really feels cinematic or manufactured. Just lets the actors and the dialogue carry the story, as he should, because it's really strong. Sparse production, but that helps. That adds to the atmosphere. It feels like, I don't know where the actual pub scenes were filmed, whether it was inside that pub or not, but it just feels real. And he does well. He doesn't try and overplay his hand. It's like 80 minutes long, perfect. Doesn't drag at all. I feel like if it had have gone any longer, it might have. I think we would have had to have had the funeral at the end if it was going to keep going. This could have worked as a stage play. Maybe it did, I'm not sure. Because all the drama in this is coming from conversations and arguments and memories, and there's no real action scenes in this film or anything. There's nothing happening here that couldn't happen on a stage. And the characters are all trapped together in close quarters, so... not a date film. It's not a entertaining, enjoyable watch. It's really emotionally heavy and uncomfortable at times, and centered around really damaged male relationships. It's not gonna send any sparks flying your way. I also don't think it's a hangover film. It's too sparse and somber and emotionally demanding. No comedy or light relief. Well, apart from a few moments at the start, but you need to zero in on this one. It's a watch alone film, I think. Very reflective, makes you sit back and remember things. Well, it did for me, especially if you were around in that time, and all those touchstones leap out at you that I mentioned about Sydney in the late 90s. And it will sit with you for a while, I think, if you were in that moment. So look, this is a small Australian film, but it really captures something very specific from that time, a certain age and lifestyle, and I think a certain version of Australia and Sydney that's disappeared. But moving beyond that nostalgic side of it, the film really works because the family story is so honest and relatable. Even if it's not, the violent side of it isn't relatable, family tensions certainly are, and responsibility and guilt. And above all, this film did give us one of Hugh Jackman's greatest performances, before most people realised just how good he could be. And I remember watching it at the time and thinking that. I remember watching it on the earliest version of pay TV in Australia, and I wasn't convinced of him then. He'd been in small films like Paperback Hero, and he had this goody two-shoes reputation, and seeing him in this snarling performance really got my attention then, but I forgot about it until I saw Prisoners, and yeah, I should have. Well, this film just didn't come around. I only just saw it on Amazon Prime, and I hadn't seen it pop up, or it hadn't entered my thinking until now. So really glad I checked it out. Anyway, that's Erskineville Kings from 1999. Check it out if you can. Like I said, it's on Amazon Prime at the moment. And yeah, enjoy. Thanks for watching as always, or listening, not watching. And see you next time.